Morning, everyone. Um, my name is Sandra Koza, and I'm the project coordinator for the Just Transition Labour Centre. Thank you all for taking time off your busy schedules to be with us here today. My role this morning is just short. I'll be just calling up the next speaker every time they have to come up. So I'll just get straight to it. The first speaker will be Matthew Grant, who is the center's manager, who do the welcoming as well as acknowledging stakeholders. Thank you.
Hello, morning, everyone. Finally, we here with our launch. It's been a while in coming. We do have a few people still arriving, but as they do, we'll just seat them and we'll begin with our program. I do just want to say thank you for attending for the launch of the Just Transition Labour Centre. I started back in October working for TIPS as the Just Transition Labour Centre manager. And then finally, we have our team in our centre. And we've got a new building, which we will take everyone after the proceedings to show you our new building, where the centre is going to be based. And we've got 2 researchers and our project coordinator for our team that'll be assisting us as the centre to do the work we need to do relating to the just transition to help the labour movement and the working class in general. And gratefully housed by TIPS, Trade and Industrial Policy Strategies, which is fantastically helping the centre to meet the goals and do some empirical evidence-based kind of research and support for the labour movement in general, for the just transition and climate change as well. I think our program, as we've been going, has started to fill up quite a lot. So thank you, Lebo, for giving us more work as well. But also a special thank you for the funders that are supporting this work. We've got 3 funders that have started with us, Climate Works Foundation, African Climate Foundation, and Agence Française de Développement. So thank you very much for supporting us, and gratefully set up, with the help of the trade union federations, the centre was set up, about 18 months ago, I think now. So it has taken us a bit of a while to get running. But we do have a full team, and we have been running quite fast. We do have a few projects, which I'll tell you all about as we go. But I do just want to acknowledge that we have Kusatu represented in the room. Saftu's just arrived, Comragius. We've also got Fedusa, and Naktu was unable to make it in person for our launch. But those are the 4 federations that we serve as the Just Transition Labour Centre. And then we've got, I'll introduce you as we go, a variety of persons that have helped the centre get up and running. And then we've got a wonderful TIPS staff as well that is in attendance. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Julia Lagana, who's from the International Trade Union Confederation and is also part of their Just Transition Labour Centre. And we're going to be working hand in hand with them as well. Julia, are you online?
I am indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, Excellent. We can.
Excellent. I can't see anybody except you, Matthew, but it's still nice to see you. And I'm sure the audience are great as well. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say hi, and I'm really happy and to congratulate the establishment of the Just Transition Labour Centre in South Africa. At the International Trade Union Confederation, we've had a Just Transition Centre for almost a decade. And as of the beginning of this year, we've brought together all the climate work at the ITUC. So we also include the multilateral work at COP and in the other UN processes. So it's now called the Just Transition and Climate Department, but it's still JTC. And we've had a long-standing partnership with our ITUC affiliates, the national unions in South Africa. And we followed the developments very closely and provided support to unions in South Africa. And we know that that unions in your country are indeed at the forefront of efforts for just transition, not just on the continent in Africa, but worldwide. We're always citing South Africa as a leading example of what workers and unions can do to push governments and businesses to really place workers at the center of the climate transition. So again, I just wanted to say that we are very, very happy, and we have indeed already touched base with the JTLC and will continue to support you. We also spoke yesterday with the New Bangladesh Just Transition Labour Centre that was also established very recently, and there are others popping up in other countries. So something that we hope to facilitate is also establishing those connections across the world with similar centres, bringing together workers' voices to provide the research, the policy advice, technical expertise, the support to unions and workers in this crucial transition. So thanks a lot. I'll be staying online for a little bit more to follow the proceedings, and then I'm off to a major event we're hosting called Just Transition Rising, co-hosted with CAN International, which you're all invited to join from 12 to 3 p.m. today if you're available online. And I'll pop the invitation to that in the chat just in case. But thank you once again, and good luck for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
Thanks, Matthew, for the welcome, as well as you, Julia. Next up, I'm going to call Lebogang Mulaisi. She is the Executive Manager for Policy and Research at the Presidential Climate Commission. She'll be telling us about the background and how the idea of the center came about and how we got to today say we have a Just Transition Labour Center for South Africa. Thank you.
Okay, tall people here. All right. I need to look at that camera. Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna try. It may not work out all of the time, but I'm gonna try. Very nervous to be here today. It's not very often that, you spend your nights thinking about something, and then you convince a lot of people about it. Others didn't think it was a good idea. Others thought it was a great idea. And then you still keep talking to a lot of people, and then fast forward, we're here today. Bear with me. I'm also incredibly emotional when I think about the center and what we wanted it to do. So this was not my idea alone. There are a lot of people in the trade union movement that believed that we needed capacity to drive South Africa's just transition in a manner that is truly just, but with labor at the center, so that we drive this mass mobilization of progressive forces together in a movement to really achieve a just transition for South Africa. Also, just to say thank you to Julia and ITUC, as well as the Just Transition Center. We really got this idea because of a lot of the conversations that the Just Transition Center was having at the time, and including us in those conversations at the time. Back then, I used to work for COSATU. And really the idea was that a transition is going to happen. That's just the nature of the world that we live in. We're subjected to a number of transitions. If labor is not at the forefront of those critical transitions, it's very easy for those transitions to happen in a manner that is haphazard, in a manner that does leave people behind. So it's important for labor to have their say within that transition, but for them to also substantiate it with capacity. Because I was in the trade union for a long time. It's very easy to get stuck in slogans and very easy to get stuck in rhetoric. Not a bad thing at all. It's not. But when you are required to provide solutions in order to guide the type of transition that you want, you really need to substantiate their process with the capacity that is required, the knowledge, the skills, and the know-how. And that's why the idea of this Just Transition Labour Center took shape. We took this idea to the Labour School at the time. Represented in that Labour School was the federations that are represented in NADLEC, and they gave us the go-ahead to look for resources, to look for people that could partner with us. And thank you very much to TIPS, Saul, You really took this process and ran with it. And at the time you were completing your PhD, but like I would get emails of concept notes already prepared. I didn't have to do much, to be quite honest. Budgets were already put in place, and we'd just approach funders and make our case. So really thank you to TIPS for agreeing to be the incubator for this center. The idea is that at some point, we must be independent, Matthew. We must stand on our own 2 feet. But for now, definitely grateful to TIPS for having housed us. Thank you for the labor movement for believing in the fact that a unified voice of the unions and the federations is important for there to be a just transition. I believe in the power of the trade union. I believe in it 100%. I believe more in the unified power of the trade union. And I think when we enter into negotiations with a unified voice, our bargaining position is automatically strengthened, which is important, and definitely important as we move forward in this just transition journey. I think one of the things that was really a burning reason why we wanted a center in South Africa was because we realized that a just transition is going to look different for different contexts. So South Africa has to have a center of their own so that we can prioritize programs, we can prioritize policy interventions and national questions that are of utmost relevance to the South African context. So hence the reason why we wanted a center specifically in South Africa to appreciate those types of contexts. So also appreciating the funders that we approached. Some we had to convince a lot. I won't mention who, but I will say for those who we spoke to and they immediately got the idea and they immediately got the vision, we really appreciate your support. The French Development Agency, and thank you very much for understanding that you need to have meaningful engagement with labor community in a way that can give the process credibility and substance. So we didn't have to convince you a lot about that. Other funders, you were slow, but we got you eventually. But I must say, it didn't take a lot of convincing when we had to convince the French. And also appreciating the fact that there's a lot of similarities in the fact that, we come from very vibrant, democratic societies, right? So you could appreciate those types of alignments between the South African and the French experience. The African Climate Foundation, Salim, who, when we said we want to do this, he said, how much do you guys need? We really appreciate that. And don't stop asking us how much we need in future. We will be knocking on your door as we continue with this work. Climate Works Foundation as well has been incredibly amazing in terms of coming on board when we indicated that this is needed. This is needed. You need to drive these processes in a manner in which the voices of communities, the voice of labor is strengthened so that they can participate again meaningfully in these conversations. Moving forward, this center has its work cut out for itself. We're moving into very tricky terrain when it comes to our transition. The integrated resource plan is going to be published after deliberations in NADLEC. And by then, the decommissioning schedule of the power stations is going to be something that's quite public, and people will know how many stations are going to be decommissioned. That is probably going to be the biggest test of our transition as a country and the biggest test of the strength of the trade union movements to ensure that even in the context of such a transition, we continue to protect livelihoods, especially the livelihoods of the workforce. Now more than ever, our ability to unify is going to be very, very important. So Matthew, that's your job, but definitely there to support you. Making sure that plans aren't just plans in paper, but they start to be felt on the ground. Unfortunately, our experience with the transition to date is that it's leaving people behind. It's not just, we have the experience of Komati and it's not unfolding in the way that we would have liked. But it doesn't mean that we get to step out of the ring. You win the war while you are inside of it. We struggle within the struggle. That's how we characterize these things in the trade union. We don't sit on the sidelines and come at the end of the process and say, see, they couldn't get it right. So the test of our strength, and again, this center is established to make sure that in terms of capacity, in terms of negotiating power, we continue to put up solutions that are workable and that can take us to a process that is just. Also doubling that up with the other strengths of the trade union movement, right? So if we need to say we're not entering into negotiations, we'll meet you in the streets. Matthew, you must still find yourself within that particular process. You're not here to just research. You're also here to provide. You're also here to provide capacity in terms of other mechanisms that the trade union used to start that particular power play. So just to say that I am incredibly grateful to all of the players that have played their part in this journey. I'm incredibly grateful to see the people that have shown up here today. You are historically our partners. IEJ, when we drafted the blueprint for workers, and we said we need to win workers' demands through collective bargaining. So having you guys here today, this is part of that process to take us through that logical conclusion of winning just transition rights within collective bargaining processes. So we're continuing to take that work forward. So very happy to see everybody that's in the room here today. I don't feel like this is a foreign place at all because we have all worked together on this topic previously. So it's really nice that we're in a position where this Labour Centre is finally launched. And really excited to see the trade union voice continually be strengthened, even within deliberations within the Presidential Climate Commission, Matthew. So to continuously support those Labour commissioners who are in those quarterly meetings and who are interrogating national policy questions like South Africa's nationally determined contributions. It's really important for you to continue to play a role in those processes because, again, what matters here is the strengthened capacity and voice of the trade union, because it's only when that happens, we get to a transition that is truly just. I don't see it happening outside of labor, and I don't see it happening outside of a strengthened labor force. So our ability to unify is important. So if you didn't hear anything outside of today's session, it's really around this fact that we need to remain unified, strengthened, so that the voices of the trade union movement continue to be elevated in our discussions so that this transition is truly just. So that's it. I'll leave it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lebogang, for the comprehensive background and your interventions. Up next, I'd like to call Rudy Dix from the presidency. He's the head of project management, and he'll be giving us reflections on funding and support. Thank you.
Moran says my time is impeccable, right? Matthew's calling me panicking, and I said, no, don't. And look at him. He doesn't look like a trade union anymore. He's even better. He's even better, Comrades Wally. I try to, Comrades Wally, I still try to dress as if I'm still working for the unions, right? Matthew is now much more smart at this. I just wanted to say, look, I mean, this is a momentous occasion, and it's part of a journey that we all collectively started, particularly with the federations. And it's part of a conversation that we've always had, where we felt that many of us tend to forget where we come from. My entire life I've spent working for 24 years for various parts of COSATU. In my last job, before I moved to government, I was very terrible executive director at the National Labour Economic and Development Institute. My boss that's sitting over there didn't want to give me more money, right? But we made our way, we made our way to do a couple of things. And I recall one of the core sort of successes was when we developed the Just Energy Transition, and it was the first kind of thing where we developed a partnership with WWF people, and we were able to find a bit of money, and we did the framework, which was adopted by the COSATU Central Executive Committee, and then we took it to COSATU Congress, right? And it was adopted. And I understand then I'd left then, and then it laid the basis for the ICFTU, and I'm not quite sure whether there was other international trade union organizations that adopted, but it laid the true sense for, a transition that is difficult. I tend to make the point that, transitions, irrespective of where they are, always tends to be difficult, particularly for the poor and workers. And this is one of those transitions that I think we got to make sure that is a fundamental shift. Transitions in 1994, transitions post 1994, it tends to, particularly in our society, given a small open economy in South Africa, where we tend to make a whole series of promises to workers and say, don't worry, we'll get the growth, we'll get the jobs. You just got to accept what we're doing, right? And it doesn't happen in our context. And I think that's something which is quite important. So the Just Transition Labour Centre is precisely why I think it's important for us to be able to continue to support as government, right? And again, I go back to my roots. I was saying to Saul and Lebo when we started this conversation that, no, we got to help comrades in COSATU, FEDUSA, NACTU, and of course, SAFTU, latecomers, to no, he knows I'm going to tell him that, latecomers, right? Important latecomers. They're important latecomers, right? And we got to find a unified voice. And if there's one thing that can unify is a organization like this, an organization that is evidence-based, knowledge-based, and supports workers and workers' views around a transition which is very, very difficult. And so, we've always said from the outset that we got to find mechanisms to support this independently so. And when we initially had the conversation, I said to Lebo, I'm going to withdraw myself, but we've got to find ways to support and continue doing this and sustaining this. But standing aside, moving out of the challenges between different federations, moving away from an ideological point of view in some sense. Ideology is important, but in a sense, you've got to get the work done and support them going forward. So I'm quite excited, and of course, government will continue to support as far as possible. I'm not saying I don't have the power to say we're going to give you money. I can't say that. But I think we've shown our mettle to try and ensure that we continue to support, and we find different ways. We chat here to Anda, and we chat to guys in GIZ, and we chat to this one and that one, and to Salim, and we find little pox, and Imran also. We'll ask him also to continue supporting that. So I think this is quite an important reflection, and Matthew has been sterling in putting it together with Lebo and Saul. And I think housing it here has been quite an important step, because it's not easy in an environment where we sit where organizations of this kind of nature can survive. Even those organizations right now with the USAID funding and the Trump dynamics, even these organizations that thought they were secure and university-based have all their funding cut, right? And has a significant impact on their survival to be able to provide as NPOs or organizations that provide research to support the kind of work going forward that this organization has set out to do. So I think that well put. TIPS, I serve as a board member of TIPS. I'm proud to be associated with the organization. Evidence and knowledge base is quite important. That provides decision making, that provides recommendations to policy making, and for the Just Transition Labour Centre to be housed and have that robust ability to be able to, for TIPS to be able to support that is quite important. So a great milestone, comrades, the general secretaries over here, from the different federations. The continued support that we trust that you will provide is an important part going forward, and we continue to work with you in making this a success for workers at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Rudy. Next, I'll be calling back the center's manager, Matthew Grant, to come give us the vision and strategy of the Just Transition Labour Center.
All right. Thank you, Lebo. Thanks, Rudy. Impeccable timing, yes. So I won't take too long. There's food waiting, there's things to do after, but I just wanted to make a few comments so that everyone has an idea as to how we function as the Just Transition Labour Centre, what our aims and our goals are. It's been mentioned a bit, but excuse me. I did want to comment and just say it's not really obvious to us how we get through the transition. It's not obvious to anyone. Business has their idea, government has their idea, communities have theirs, and Labour obviously has their idea, but nobody is able to come up with, oh, well, this is exactly how we should be doing it. This is what justice means when you transition to a cleaner energy source. No one knows. It is a fight. So the centre has been set up to support Labour, but the working class more generally. So it's not just organised labour, it's not just employed workers, it's unemployed workers, it's workers who find themselves employed for 6 months, then unemployed. It's their families. And we need to remember that workers themselves, in this country specifically, are supporting large families, 4 to 7 people. It's the working class in general. And the communities that do not necessarily have an organised way to have their voice heard near coal mines, near other elements that are going to be touched on by the Just Transition, agricultural, like farm workers. So the design of the centre is to try and assist these sets of workers, organised or unorganised, with some ammunition as to how to struggle through this and what will help them protect themselves and for their fight for a just transition. And back years ago, the Just Transition was obviously coined by the trade union movement, and that was, as it is with organised labour, a response to an obvious injustice. There was a transition that was happening in a variety of workplaces all over the world, and it was done in a form that was protecting profits, it was protecting business, it wasn't necessarily to protect labour. So for us, the Just Transition does need to be recaptured by the labour movement, and we'll try as we can here in South Africa. But we're not just looking to make it a just transition in South Africa. We're trying to make connections to other just transition centres, to other workers' movements, to a variety of those in the developed and undeveloped world or underdeveloped world, so that workers together can be looking at how they can make the transition just for themselves in a variety of places. Capitalism is global. The transition is happening on a global scale and is going to unequally affect various elements of it, of how it operates. And workers from one country need to support workers from another country as these transitions happen. We provide a lot of our coal to other countries, especially in Europe. It's those coal workers, it's our coal workers, it's our steel workers, it's other steel workers. It's about creating those connections together. So when we are operating as the centre, we are trying to actually forge those alliances. We're trying to support those workers. We are focusing on South Africa, but with an eye to solidarity globally in terms of the just transition. So with us as the centre, we've gratefully got funding that we are using to conduct research. So yes, we're a little think tank housed at TIPS, and TIPS is very helpful with us organising ourselves to focus on what we have been told to focus on by the labour movement. So the federations have come together. We've got a steering committee set up with all the 4 federations. They've told us as the centre what we need to be focusing on in terms of research they need to take forward their struggle for a just transition. So we have, and every year we'll be having a research agenda for us, And yes, our main focus is to conduct research that assists the trade union movement through the federations. And we've got support from our funders to conduct that research, evidence-based research. But the research we are focusing on is together decided on by the federations. But our design is not obviously to be telling the federations what to do or any union. It's to provide evidence and support so that they can be taking that evidence and support into their collective bargaining structures, whether it's through NEDLAC or through a direct employer. And at the moment, it's complicated because the unions we have in this country also have different ideas as to what the transition is. Are we going full coal? Are we going nuclear? Are we going green hydrogen? Whatever that might be. All of these kinds of differences, our job as the center is to support the unions with what they require. And we want to do that through evidence-based research. So that's our focus. And as we speak, we're about to have as our external research, because we've got 2 researchers as part of the center who are going to be doing a lot of dynamic research through our consultations with the federations and other unions, and providing them with support in a way that can help them with this or that meeting they've got or this or that employer. But we've also got a research program. So we're about to have that research program be conducted by some service providers. We're focusing currently on aspects of research like the coal value chain, like a annual climate change report, so that workers themselves, and also to mention the research we're conducting is going to be focused at trade unionists, but also community members. So we're going to try and popularize the research. It's not just academic. It's supposed to be understood by ordinary workers so that they can see what is happening in front of their eyes and have some ammunition as well to go and make demands on their community-based organizations, but also trade unions around the mines they might be working on or near, so that it can be popular and taken forward in that sense as well. We're going to be tracking things. Another project of ours is a quarterly tracker document, so we can be tracking as the transition is changing certain aspects of the economy. We're also going to be focusing on how participatory, in another project, the just transition efforts are. There's a lot of efforts that have been made from the government in certain municipalities or certain general meetings where they're looking for participation in their program of a just transition. So we're going to be checking to see how participatory community members find that or workers find that, so that we can actually be trying to improve those processes or call for more. We're also going to then be conducting some internal research. We're going to be preparing for COP that's coming up. And we are, and I'm probably going to regret saying this a bit, but we are here to serve all the federations in any requests that they have. I've already had some discussions. I understand what I'm saying. I already have had some discussions with a variety of the federations, but also the unions that are unfederalized, so that we can be working as the center to support them in the work that they have, whether it's in this particular workplace or as a general participant in NEDLAC or any other collective bargaining fora. The design of the center is to help them when we can. It is supposed to be reactive. It is also the main push that I'm definitely going to try and have is for it to be proactive. We need to be preparing for this. We can't just be on the back foot as organized labor or communities to react to what is happening around them. We actually have to be proactive. And it's wonderful to see, for example, COSATU's blueprint, which is a proactive document. Their Just Transition Blueprint is a proactive document. They've put forward a set of principles and policy positions that they require. And all federations should have this. All trade unions should have this. We should be entering into these discussions knowing that they're supported by evidence, by research that's been conducted, and by what the demands and needs of the communities and workers are. To be proactive, to go to government and say, these are our demands. We don't need to wait for government or employers to tell us what they're going to do. We can go to them and say, this is what we think should be happening, and to actually together make those demands. So part of the center's design is to facilitate that and to be ready to react, but also be proactive. So it's a very tricky position I find myself in, to look forward and back. But that's what it is. And then lastly, I can say the design that we are going forward with as well is to create a center that's independent. So we are being incubated by TIPS and we desperately need it, and we are very grateful for that. But looking forward, the design is to have the center be an independent center, a South African-based, trade union-focused, community-focused, just transition center. As you heard from Julia, there are other centers in the world that exist. So we're going to be trying to forge those connections. They are doing their own research. They are able to learn from unjust or the just transitions that have occurred, like in Spain with the energy transformation there. We're going to be reaching out so that we can learn from other communities, especially within Africa. It's very difficult to try and figure out and learn from a developed world how they've been transitioned. We are more interested to look first at what is happening in the region and what is happening in the continent of Africa and how those centers are operating and what has happened with other trade union federations and trade unions there. So we're hoping to collect a lot of that information, case studies, other research that's been conducted, so that we can inform the trade union movement and community-based organizations here in South Africa how those transitions have not worked and could work better, and try and apply it to our specific circumstances, that's a lot of work, but we're going to be doing that. So in a few years, we do hope to have an independent institute set up, and that's at least what I've been tasked with, so that should be happening. It will happen. It will happen. So yeah, but do keep your eye out for some research that we will be producing in the near future. And then the last thing I'll say is near the end of the year, we're going to be having, as we'll have every year, a policy conference. The Just Transition Labour Centre will host a policy conference. We'll be discussing some of the research we've conducted, and we'll be inviting a whole lot of other institutes, academic institutes, other community-based organizations, and other institutes that conduct research around the just transition to come and join us for a dialogue. We'll obviously be having the trade unions attending, and it should be a sort of dialogue where we can be arriving at some positions that this or that union might need or community-based organization thinks is a good idea to pursue. And that hopefully we'll be having near the end of the year, and please keep your eye out for that notification as well. Yeah, I think that's it for the plans, Sandra. You want to come back up and take us forward? Thank you.
Thanks, Lev. And now I'd like to call the Executive Director of TIPS, Saul Levin, and he'll be giving us the TIPS perspective and program context. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. So 2 years, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I was approached to give some ideas on this thing that was being thought about, and my response was, it does align well with what TIPS is working on. We've done a lot of work on the just transition, and then the next question was, what about an organization that can do this? And I said, as other people will, I think I had a similar conversation with Gilad. It's very hard to start a new center. And starting something new means that it takes a while to get processes up and running. You can't just start doing the research. The climate transition and the impacts of climate change and other changes mean that this is fairly urgent. We can't just wait for several years to get a center sorted out, to get funding in. Let's hit the ground running. So the next question was, can TIPS assist? And when your board member and chief arm twister comes along, you agree. But it made sense. The fit was good. And part of it is that TIPS a while ago had recognized that climate change is happening. There's a reality. There's a response to climate change that can be just or it can be unjust. And that response is what we need to think about. That there's climatic events that we can see are getting worse. But it's not only climatic events. It's the old industries that we have in this country that are being impacted. We're seeing that in places like Newcastle that are also they big energy intensive users. it's linked. We see all of these things under threat, and it impacts on workers and their communities. So we had started a while ago trying to unpack all of this to better understand what are these impacts? How do we respond to these big changes that are coming? And so over the years, we had developed quite a robust research agenda, and we've done multiple papers and dialogues and discussions looking at these things. And for me, research is an important contributor to our thinking. It's not something that, can just happen or you can understand these transitions. There's an important role for research. There's obviously an important place for action and policy change, but research that contributes and informs that for us at TIPS is very important, and it's why we exist and why we've taken on projects like the Labour Centre and other work that we've been doing. Some of the other projects that we've been involved in, and a lot of it started with the National Employment Vulnerability Assessment that we did a few years ago, and sector jobs resilience plans that really launched us. We're already doing quite a bit of work on sustainable development. It's a core part of our work, but these studies and identifying the core sectors that are going to be impacted by this transition meant that we needed to get a handle on it, because we really needed to say what are the jobs impacts, what are the community impacts, and let's get some robust research to understand this better. So we did that work. We're now updating it. We've got some additional funding from it's a UK Pact, or the UK FCDO from the UK, to update that work and to try and go deeper to better understand some of these jobs impact. So we're still very active in the space. We're doing more work. We've been doing quite a bit of work looking at a finance roadmap around the just transition and financing for just transition projects, but not us providing the finance, but we've developed a theoretical framework which we've now translated into an electronic model, which will be on our website next week. We've done all the testing. It works. You guys will be happy to know. And we'll have it up next week. We'll do a launch in a couple of months once we have a chance to get it going and people using it. But that process took several years. We tried to understand what are the financing needs, what makes something classify, excuse me, as just transition. And getting there has been important. We've also done work on looking at cross-country learnings. What are other countries doing? We've looked at specific research on sectors that need to decarbonize, and how do we keep those sectors alive and thriving, but on a low carbon trajectory? Or what do we need to look at doing differently in order for that decarbonizing work to happen? And some of that has seen us working in partnership with GIZ for a Just SA project, and we've got the team also in the room today, and that's very specific around pathways towards an environmentally sustainable and low carbon economy, and looking at, quite importantly, a lot of it is in Mpumalanga, but it's not only in Mpumalanga. It's across the country. We're going to be seeing these things happen. There's energy centers in other provinces that are going to be hit by this, or energy intensive users that are going to have to look at different decarbonizing pathways, and economic diversification and continuing our industrial capacity, decarbonized industrial capacity, but continuing that is going to be very important. The work that we're doing on sustainable development and our inclusive growth strategy is linked into this work. So we're doing work around greening, what we call, as we refer to it, the MEC, the Minerals Energy Complex. We have a historical way that our industry was structured. How do we green that? How do we think about greening it? Does it mean converting old industries to greener energy sources, or does it mean new industries that are less carbon intensive, or a mix of both? So we're unpacking that. We're doing some very interesting research. We've got some papers on our website. 2 more will be on our website in the coming weeks. They've just been concluded. And we're starting some thinking and dialogues on these issues, because we need to think about what is our path dependency? Are we going to break with that? How do we break with that? And if climate change is a reality, how do we respond to that in a way that keeps South Africa industrialized, people employed, and communities benefiting from that economic activity? So there's a lot to think about, and some key institutions that we've all grown up with: Sasol, what used to be ISCOR, now AMSA. These are institutions or companies that are bigger than just small operations, that they are massive, big employers, big impact, core providers of inputs to the rest of a supply chain, but are impacted by these transitions. And so we're doing that research to better understand all of these things that happens. A lot of this can't happen without a team. We've got a really committed team that's doing the work, and we're glad to host. And I'm glad you're enjoying working with the team, but to host the Labour Centre, we started this project with me doing a lot of the work in midst of my PhD and late nights and support from a few people. But then we brought people on board. So the team is important. The funders are important. A lot of our industrial funding, inclusive industrial development funding, comes from the DTRC. But also the donors who've chipped in. I think it's been mentioned, a few donors who are part of the Labour Centre. But we also have other donors that we're working with who have bought into how we are unpacking these issues, so that we can further the agenda that we have around keeping South Africa on a pathway to industrial development and employment, hopefully, through all of this. There's a lot of other work that TIPS, as a organization that thrives on providing evidence-based policy support. So we've got several trackers that we've got on our website that we circulate. There's our Real Economy Bulletin. We do an import tracker, export tracker, FDI tracker, a localization bulletin. We do a report every year on small business and a provincial review, as well as looking at the region. And we do a lot of thinking around South Africa's location within a broader region. And that ties into some of the sustainable development thinking around critical minerals and how do we lift up our neighbors so that we all on a pathway to improved economic development. We've also been very active in the master plan process, which again is a partnership between government, business and labor. And that's important because we all around the table trying to align with how we can grow the economy. And we need to see how the just transition fits into those master plans. So then in conclusion, I'm incredibly proud that we've been able to pull this together, supportive funders, a strong team, backers in government and wherever Lebogang sits in the air somewhere, and then the partnership with the unions. I mean, we've had long discussions. I think the first meeting we had at Kasatu House, we had the unions around the table, and it was this idea that we were kind of playing with. Rudy was delayed because he was overseas and he couldn't even make the first meeting. But we had this idea, and then we slowly started to build it and flesh it out so that we could have this exciting partnership. And we look forward to working with the union movement on this venture, but also broadly on the other work that we do. I think we've had a long working relationship with various unions and the movement as a whole, and to continue that. We're glad to be part of this. We hope that we can incubate this successfully so that it's a sister institution that can thrive in future, and that at the end of the day, we as TIPS remain committed to collaboration and engaging with Labour to find our way through this transition, and in a way that supports rebuilding our industrial capacity towards a low carbon trajectory. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Saul. And now for the owners of the center, I'd like to call the comrades from the federations, the ones who will be speaking on behalf of the federations. Can you please come join me in front? Sorry, guys. From COSATU is Comrade Tanya, from FEDUSA is Comrade GS Rivda, and from SAFTU is Comrade GS Vavi. They'll be giving us their interventions on why the center matters and its importance for the working class. They'll also be giving us perspectives on labor's role in this transition, as well as their expectations from the center. First, I'd like to call Comrade Tanya van Millis. She's the head of policy unit at COSATU. Thank you, Comrade Tanya.
Thanks very much, and greetings to everyone. It's lovely to see people, comrades, long-standing comrades, longer-standing comrades, female comrades, and all of you. So it's very exciting to be here. It's a landmark occasion, but it's not just launching the center. It's forging a new weapon for the working class. It's forging a new weapon in our struggle for justice, for decent work, and to make sure that no worker is left behind. We know climate change isn't a distant threat. We all see it every day in our lives. Workers in factories in Natal lost jobs because of floods. Workers are dying. Agricultural workers are dying because of excessive heat. It's here and it's now. So just transition isn't something that is a luxury. It's not an academic thing that we should be talking about. It's a necessity for workers now. But as we engage in, when we embark on our engagements, we have to say with the transition, what kind of transition is it going to be? Is it a transition that's going to sacrifice jobs at the altar of green capitalism? Is it going to leave workers and communities behind, discarded like old machinery? Is it going to deepen our already obscene levels of inequality? Is it going to legitimize pursuing profit above everything else? So for us, that's not negotiable. We can't have that. For workers, a just transition must mean that we have jobs, we protect jobs, we create jobs, not just jobs, decent work. We want negotiated outcomes, not little companies, people scattered all around without the benefits that they've had of long-term secure employment. We want skilling and upskilling for workers moving forward. We need social dialogue. Workers need to be at the center in their factories, in their communities, at local government, at national level. We need, for a just transition, more investment in infrastructure, more investment in economic and social infrastructure, but also making sure that there's more investment to ensure that there's social protection for workers. There's diversification, that industries that need to develop and be worker-owned are funded. We need to make sure there's money, and therefore part of the fight for a just transition is a fight against austerity now, else we will never manage. So why does this centre matter so much? It'll be a hub for research, for policy development, for advocacy, for ensuring workers' voices are not only heard, but are central to the debates. It'll record the impact on workers. Instead of people being able to say, well, there were some problems with Komati and we'll adjust, we need to record and show the impact on workers' lives and on communities' lives. We also need to record what the future is that we as workers want, that we are able to shape. So we're not being dragged along by a market-driven neoliberal force that says, well, skills are needed here, companies demanding it here. How do we marry? We need to use this as a way to reshape our world, reshape power relations, reshape the kind of jobs that we have, reshape where production is taking place, reshape and recognize, for example, the care economy as critical to a just transition and recognizing the role that women play. It's imperative that the centre helps us engage in our struggle in social dialogue in a variety of areas. One critical space we recognise and we acknowledge is government does open up space. It does help provide funding. So Rudy, we thank you. Lebogang, Presidential Climate Change Commission, there are those spaces. We need to constantly make sure we arming ourselves to go into those spaces. But where the spaces are there, we have to fight hard. And I'll give one example. We need a framework and we need a code of good practice for how we engage the just transition. It's critical because else the principles are in the air. We need something that ties business and government to say, how are we going to ensure an act? That's a code of good practice. What are we going to do? What is the framework? We can't say we've learned the lessons from Komati. We're moving forward. We need to capture those into a framework for a transition for coal communities. Those engagements must take place. And we need to drag, at this point, business and government into that chamber to get it, because else all the good words mean nothing at all. The scale of the transition is enormous. And what we know as Labour and what the centre allows us to do is for the various federations to come together so that we can strategize, we can decide what research is the research that we need. We can build common positions in the interests of the working class. The centre is another site for us as Labour to keep building our unity. And in that sense, it's critical. We need to move out of here, having committed to making sure the centre works, using the information and taking forward the information as our fights. So the centre is not just a centre. It's not just a weapon, but it's a beacon of hope where we can think about the world we want to create and make sure that we have the tools, the armor to do so. So it's not just the birth of the centre today. It's your christening. It's your christening into struggle. So all I can say for you and for comrades is Alita continua.
Thank you, Comrade Tanya. Next, I'd like to call from FEDUSA, Comrade General Secretary Rifda Ajam. Thank you, Comrade.
A very good morning to everyone present, comrades, partners, friends in the struggle, and in particular to my Vice President, Comrade Wahid Hussein, who is the nerve center at FEDUSA when it comes to climate change. I have the advantage of having an angle from this side. So Comrade Tanya and I share the same commonality, if I should say. So she was standing on her toes and engaging. So I have the reputation of being the shortest general secretary in the history of South Africa. So I feel a bit more okay now, knowing that I'm also going to be doing this, but a little bit shorter. But nonetheless, Tanya, thank you for helping me this morning. Ladies and gents, comrades and friends, today is not just about ceremonial speeches or symbolic gestures. Let's not kid ourselves. And I'm trying to be good as I stand here this morning, knowing that I'm a trade unionist. I'd be failing in my job and I'd be failing in the discourse if I stand here and present Sweet factors. I know full well that we are in the presence here of funders. But if we are not going to bear our hearts on the floor and on the table to all of you, you will never know what our struggles are. And if we are going to be advancing on this matter, which has been characterized by an existential threat, not just to South African workers, but to our brothers and our sisters the world around, then it is our responsibility to co-create and collaborate in every respect of the word. Our president often says, let us not leave anyone behind. But today, as we stand here, we are demanding to take everyone forward in this fight. So forgive me if I don't bite on my tongue as I advance on the issues here today in the presence of funders, those who are interested in the subject matter and those who are passionate by it. So we gather here to welcome what must be a tool for real transformation, a centre that works for the working class, with the working class, and never above the working class. Fedusa joins this launch with clear eyes and full intention. Full intention. We are not here for observation. We are not here just to be passive participants. We are here to shape and we are here to sharpen. The Just Transition Labour Centre must become a nerve centre for justice, not just a hub of information or dialogue. It must serve workers, not abstract ideals. There is no clean break when inequality still poisons our society. There is no green development if it dispossesses the very people who power this country. Sir Matthew, when you made that bold standing here earlier on, I was so proud of you. You will be flooded by a lot of information and requests from all of us in the trade union movement, because the conversation is so challenging, so difficult, and we can only do this if we do this together. We've heard enough promises of inclusion that come long after the deals have been signed and the funds have been allocated. I'm going to repeat that. We have heard enough promises of inclusion that come long after the deals have been signed and the funds allocated. And I'm acutely reminded of the colloquium on the JET IP, where Fedusa was equally a participant, and the late former Minister Praveen was there likewise when we engaged on the process. And I want to reiterate that we will not tolerate the fact that we are an afterthought. We will not tolerate the fact that you go and sign those deals and that you appease those wherever you find yourselves in the respective fora, and then come and tell us that the deals have been signed, because ultimately we are not here to be rubber stamping agents. We are here to be part of the process. Workers are too often expected to carry the cost of a transition that they had no voice in designing. So I re-emphasize, we are not rubber stamps. The centre must become the space where labour is not an afterthought, not a stakeholder to be engaged, but a full force setting the direction, shaping the debate and driving solutions. And it is not a secret that workers have known about this crisis for a very long time, whether it is the just transition or otherwise, that have become buzzwords now. We understand the impact of droughts, of floods. We understand the impact of displacement and heat waves and energy collapse. We don't need lectures on urgency. We've lived through that for so long. Just take a look at the energy crisis. And we will not be sacrificed on that altar of urgency either, when the urgency is there and we get consulted afterwards. We will not allow others to greenwash profits while working class communities are gutted by unemployment. De-skilled by automation these days, and the notion of the future of work We must be part of those transitions. We cannot continue to loosely use the words, we will not be left behind. And Fedusa has always been clear, if the transition is not just, it is not acceptable. Full stop. We will not apologize for defending jobs. That is what makes us tick every single day. We will not play along when the workers are asked to bear the costs while the boardrooms count the benefits. We will not stand by when public services are undermined by climate inaction or austerity that is dressed up as reform. We will name and challenge false solutions, and we will call out cosmetics change that is costly to workers and the poor, and we will remain rooted in the daily realities of our members, the ones who switch on the lights, who keep the trains running, who heal the sick, who teach our children, who drive the buses, who clean the streets, and who stitch the clothes, who move the goods. So let me be direct if I haven't captured your attention as yet. Labour's role in this transition is not symbolic. It is strategic by its very intent. We are not here to fill seats, and we are ultimately here to set the terms. And as Fedusa, we will not waver from the demands. No job must be lost without a concrete plan. No worker must be left without training or income protection, as my sister has indicated earlier on, in terms of social protection. And I'm so honored to be part of a platform today where there are so many females here alongside the males, because for too long, when the waves have come of the jobs bloodbath, we find that the women who are often the breadwinners are the major sacrificial lambs each time, and this transition is no different. The communities cannot be abandoned in silence, and the transition must not happen without negotiation and accountability. Now, many of you have come here as friends, as comrades, as partners, to find out what the centre needs to do. We've heard from the directors, we've heard from the partners, but what kind of research do we need when we look at this particular centre? And I must be frank that Fedusa is not interested in any such way in academic posturing. We need the language that speaks to the people on the ground floor so that they understand what this existential threat is. We are all here, we understand what the lingo means and how it addresses certain elements, but until such time that we are not winning the hearts of our people who are directly impacted by what this transition is going to be, we also need to understand that the synchronization and the synergy must be there when we talk about this transition. We need tools that workers can use, and we want the transformation that lands in the bargaining chambers, in collective agreements and in negotiations over plant closures and in our community town halls. We want research that answers questions our members are already asking. And what are some of those questions that they are asking? Where exactly are these new jobs going to be? We all talk about this green jobs and the just transition, but where are these jobs? Are they real? Or is these just once again political talking points? We need to engage them. What happens with the frontline workers in particular in health and education as climate disasters increase? And why do I place so much emphasis on this particular matter? Because last year at the International Labour Conference, the conversation started on biological hazards. Now, when we speak about biological hazards as workers, we had tough and intense negotiations, but those biological hazards are directly impacted and related to climate change, for they shift and they reshape what the ecosystems look like, and our frontline workers and our workers in agriculture and elsewhere are directly impacted by these shifts and shapes in the ecosystems. We cannot allow them to be left behind once again in terms of these elements. So A convention supported by a recommendation was ultimately what we won as workers because the employers pushed back at every single stage. So our job this year, God willing, when the agreements are going to be finalized and signed, is for us to place pressure on government to ensure the domestication and the ratification of that convention so that the work of the centre brings about a lot more meaning. And ultimately and critically so, as I've mentioned earlier on, how do we make sure that women workers, especially in the informal and low-paid sectors, are not pushed behind further to the margins? What training needs to be rolled out and who is able to access it? And how do we trace where the JET IP funds are going? How do we hold employers and governments to account when their policies, Rudy, does not align with the real and the desired outcomes? So let's be clear, this is not charity work that the centre is doing. It has taken a lot of effort. Lebogang, my apologies for not acknowledging you. You have put a lot of muscle into this alongside many others here. And this is about co-designing tools and research with labour for nothing for us without us. Fedusa wants the centre to become a site of co-production where our unions and federations shape the questions, validate the data, and co-own the outcomes. Because when research is rooted in the shop floor, it becomes power. We want that power to be felt everywhere, from the bargaining tables to NEDLAC, to Parliament, to COP summits, from the union office to the community halls. So to Matthew and your team, we're here to work with you. But this must be a partnership of equals, not one of convenience. We must expect structured and regular engagement, and one that is sharing of data and analyses, and we expect the tools that empower our negotiators and shop stewards. We expect shared advocacy, not necessarily duplication, where we can reflect on the democratic and collective nature of the labour movement, because that is how we build lasting people-centred solutions. Remember, when we speak about this transition, we speak about a human-centered approach. So we are here to demand a future that works for all of us. And in closing, a future where dignity is not negotiable, where green jobs are decent jobs, and where state capacity is rebuilt, where the workers' voices shape every climate and development policy, where the economy will serve the people and not the other way around. Fedusa is in this fight. That is my message, ultimately, to stand shoulder to shoulder alongside our sister federations and to support the work that Matthew, you and your team are going to be doing as a labour movement overall, and now within the confines of what the centre envisions. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Comrade Rifda. And now from SAFDU, I'd like to call Comrade GS Zwelinzima Vavi to come give his intervention. Thank you.
This is fine where it is. Put that on the step. I guess so. Good morning, dear comrades, program director and the leadership, and from all of the institutions that are here today, the friends of the labor movement, the leadership of the other federations we work with. Let me start by thanking TIPS. Where's Neva?
Was he writing something downstairs?
And my special greetings to her. You will know the history. And the leadership of the center. Thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this historic launch. And on behalf of SAFDU, let me express our heartfelt appreciation for this milestone, the establishment of a worker-oriented center dedicated to the just transition. And we welcome this as a very timely and necessary initiative. And I see someone that I've never ever seen in a suit. And believe me, I've been everywhere with him, wearing only these red colors. And now I'm shocked by the attire. That attire, I know, will not change the ideology. There is an agency, as everyone has said already. The climate calamity is here. We are being impacted upon every day in our lives. We are being displaced left, right, and center. We are dying in great numbers. We are here. We know that the people who are hardest hit by this is the working class and the poor marginalized majority in our society. Yet, in the face of this threat, we must insist that climate justice cannot come at the expense of the working class. It must be one with the working class, or it will not be a just transition at all. The concept of a just transition emerges from the ranks of the trade union movement. It's us who brought this forward, no one else. It's rooted in the demand that workers and the communities must not be collateral damage in the shift to a low carbon economies. But today that concept, like everything else, has been hijacked by the capitalist class and the enemies of the people who developed the concept. And that hijacking we are witnessing is what is leading to everything that has been said. The greenwashing of the corporates, the investment-led transitions that prioritize profits and not justice, the secretive independent power producers contracts that privatize generation and profits while socializing the risks to the working class and the public. And comrades, that's not a just transition. It is a corporate transition, one that sees Eskom gutted and workers sacrificed at the altar of the markets. And we must say the same thing about the Operation Vulindlela 2 and the myth of private sector-led solutions. Operation Vulindlela 2 claims to fast-track reforms and infrastructure, but in truth, it opens the door wider for privatization through the back door. It does the following: it shifts the investment risks to the public, whilst guaranteeing profits to the private sector. It entrenches the power of the financial elites and large corporations. It undermines public ownership and democratic planning. The result is dual pricing rising tariffs, energy poverty, and deepening inequality, all justified in the name of just transition. And yesterday, we were reading yet another horror statistics from Statistics South Africa that in summary tells us that in our country, where others are fleeing from from what they term a genocide, the great trek of 49. Of 49. By the way, I was just sharing this with Lebuhan that I see where I don't know whether this is fake news or what, but there is some news agency saying that look, Trump is disappointed that these 49 are not farmers. They are all car guards. And I don't know, years. But the point that I was making is that the horror of yesterday tells us one simple message. Out of the 9 provinces, now 8 officially Gauteng have joined the other 7. 8 have an unemployment rate of 40% plus. And that Northwest remain the worst affected at 56% unemployment rate. Anywhere else except the tamed movements in South Africa, that will lead to massive demonstrations in the streets. Massive. But here, there will be a tweet here and there, public statement here and there, and we will wait for the next statistics on gender slaughter in August and the youth unemployment in June, and then we will dance in October to the cultural month before we go to play our music at the end of the year, as if we are not living a disaster unfolding right in front of our eyes. So, this is what is happening. The IPPs are being awarded long-term guaranteed return projects or contracts. Their agreements remain secret, top secret. But we know now, from here and there, you understand this is what is happening, that these include the take or pay clauses and profit guarantees regardless of actual generation. Eskom and the public carry the system risk whilst the private sector cashes in. This is privatization, comrades, and we must reject it. And Matthew, one of the things that we must do is to file an application to demand that all of the contracts that have been signed by the previous regime and this regime must be publicized. Is this not part of their mandate? What? We don't have money to do it. Someone else must help us with the money to do that. So what will be a real just transition look like? And I think the two comrades have already articulated that. Let me again emphasize. Real transition must include the democratic public ownership of energy and infrastructure. the retraining, reskilling, and reindustrialization with guarantees of decent work. That's what Rifta was saying, and Tanya. The reinvestment in public services, education, housing, and healthcare. A climate fund under the public and worker control, not elite enrichment. A participation in the planning, not technocratic imposition or market capture. That's what we want to see in the just transition. And on this, we are united. So we see the role of TIPS as supporting us, as well as the Just Transition Labour Center as giving us the capacity as the labor movement and the space to develop the independent analysis and the counter narratives to those that have hijacked the concept of a just transition. And this is very important, the issue of capacity. Just to give you a joke, and someone whispered in my ear that our representatives in the Presidential Commission are largely keeping very quiet today and not being robust when the thieves of every concept are shifting things to their interest. And it made me to remember when I was a little bit younger than this, there was a general secretary of Potwa called Mlungisi Hlongwane. And those who are gray-haired will remember Mlungisi Hlongwane. During this transition of the early 1990s, and we're getting more and more involved in the policy directions of the country, he related a story from the representatives of his own union who have gone to a very technical meeting. Now these were the days of report back and mandate, which we must revive or die. So he says workers went to this meeting and they came back to say, when they were being asked, in line with this tradition of report back and mandate, report, comrades, what happened? All they could say is, comrades, Ziatu. Meaning that we didn't understand a thing of what was happening there. Ziatu, my comrades. That's all that. The report is all that we say, Ziatu. And because we didn't priority the issue of capacity enough. Now this center must help us so that we don't go to the Presidential Climate Change Commission and come back to say Ziatu. And we couldn't make a competition. So that's the first thing that is very important. It must strengthen our ability to engage. It must build our internal capacity to intervene in policy, to negotiate better outcomes, and to mobilize our members politically. It must help demystify the green economy and expose the false solutions wrapped in development jargon. That's what we want. So SAFTU, in line with that vision, demands that we should oppose privatization. And we must be more vigorous in rejecting any forms of a takeover of everything from the public and taking over by the private sector. In particular, when it is disguised as a climate reform. We must demand public ownership and control of the renewable energy under democratic oversight. We must demand full participation and transparency in all these IPP deals and contracts. In fact, we must demand that the IPP contracts must be scrapped and that everything must be handed over to Eskom to drive the just transition and to a low carbon economy. And I know this is a high demand. But it's very, very high. There is a reason why those things were signed in secret. All you can see about the results of the secret deals is to listen to Padili Holihudla, the former statistician general, when he speaks about the growing and yearning gap between the former oppressed people, the black people. Then you understand why things are being done in secret. When you see them rolling with their Rolls Royce and putting that in the social media, you understand why everything must be in secret. When you see them posting about their holidays in Dubai and the best holiday spots in the world, you understand why they insisted that everything must be secret. So yes, the IPPs must go. A public climate transition fund focusing on community-owned projects and decent jobs. A mass public investment, rail, public transport, and localized food and energy systems. Worker representatives in all just transition bodies with meaningful decision-making power. And lastly, a climate reparations from global polluters and the rejection of the IMF World Bank green austerity. That's all we're asking for. So when we work with the other comrades, we hope that we can coordinate. We hear that COSATU have done a comprehensive policy proposal on this. We can only hope that we can integrate and to make sure that there is only but one labor position that accommodate all of us. And from what I've heard from you, Tanya, and from Rifta, it looks like this will be the easiest thing to do. So we look forward to working closely with TIPS, with the center, with the sister federations, and NACTU in its absence, we speak on its behalf. We will ensure that labor is not a passenger, and we must not be a passenger in this transition, but a driver of the new, equitable, and democratic future. Power concedes nothing without a struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade GS, and thank you to you all, comrades. Thank you, leadership, for your interventions. What you've said today, we've heard, and yeah, we are ready to take all the mandates and start with the work. Comrades, we are colleagues and comrades, we are towards the end of our program. And before I call Matthew to do the closing remarks, I know we've all been sitting the whole day listening. I know that some of us have some burning inputs or comments that we'd like to make. So I'll be opening up the floor for any inputs and comments. So by the show of hands, colleagues, who'd like to say something? Just a few hands.
Thanks, Comrade. When actually I was taking notes when Comrade Matthew was unpacking about the vision and mission of the center. Maybe can you, comrades, maybe explain in greater detail in terms of supporting organizations? Is it only going to be on research, as Comrade Trudy was saying, that we don't want to be a center whereby it must be informative and research based? So how are you going to support these organizations? Are you going just to come and say, oh, Comrade Trudy has done this type of work. We want your endorsement and stuff. How are we going to run this journey? Because one is it's want to understand how we're going to run the journey from the foundation to the last stage, because we don't want to, as the leadership has alluded, to become a rubber stamping thing. But I wanted just to get a clarity. How are we going to have comrades who will be working, especially because we are federations and all of these are happening in unions that are organizing in different sectors, your farm workers, your metal, your engineering, where this just transition will be taking place. So I wanted the how part. I don't know, maybe it's a difficult question, Comrade Matthew, but because you are wearing a suit now, Comrade, you'll be able to respond.
Thank you. Is there another hand? Comrade Bongani, you can go ahead and make your input.
Good morning. It's still morning. Good morning, comrades, and good morning to the leadership at large. Thank you for this opportunity to engage on such important subject that advocate for workers' input. I'd like to appreciate the work that has been put into this and congratulate everyone who really put in the hard work and many hours of stressing, trying to put this and organize this engagement forum. My name is Ubongani Muniji from SASPO, the finance union. In finance, we are facing a dire situation in terms of workers being replaced by the machine. I saw one comment in the chat where the AI component was being shared in terms of how are we going to leverage the automation or the digitization of the work, especially in finance. How is this committee or this research this labor center going to assist the finance, the job bloodbath in the finance sector? As SASPO, we've been advocating for a lot of policy changes in terms of workers losing their work, because every speaker sitting in the room there, you've got an app that you will just automate, that you just sign into, and then do your banking, unlike going to a traditional banking branch. So that is one job or two jobs that the staff have been caught. Now, my question really to the labor center, it's been a long road in terms of the just transition and the climate change coming from COSATU, and it's been a long road. I'm glad that this has been achieved. Realistically, is South Africa ready for a low carbon economy, comrades? I think we should really look ourselves and look at the reality that are we really ready in terms of making the stride? Are we looking at the policy and investment commitment in terms of us achieving the low carbon economy? Comrades, are we looking at the renewable energy expansion in terms of the challenges hindering the readiness in terms of the low carbon economy? Are we looking at the corporate and policy delays? Comrade Badi has just alluded that some contracts are done in secret, especially the corporate policies. One of the speakers here talks about transition. It's not a corporate transition, but it's a workers' transition. Is it really a workers' transition and the skills and the workforce transition. In terms of us, the country faces a skills gap, a big mismatch between traditional industries and emerging green sectors. Are we really ready in terms of how is this center going to assist in terms of us being ready to transition to a low carbon economy? And then lastly, comrades, how will this center, the Labour Center, assist the workers and the community at the same breath, prioritizing environment, social justice, and development of skills and reskilling of workers? One speaker who just spoke now alluded to the fact that are you going to support organizations? We are in COSATU, we are in SAFTU, we are in NAFTU, and all those things. However, the affiliates, I think it's one or two affiliates that have the just transition policies. So now we're just following in terms of us that we are in COSATU. There's a blueprint for workers. However, the affiliates in COSATU, they don't have those policies drawn up to assist workers. As I've alluded in the banking sector, in the finance sector, what is happening. So how are we going to make sure that the workers are reskilled? Comrades, thank you very much for this opportunity. And congratulations for organizing us. Thank you, I submit.
Thank you, Comrade Bongani. Thomas, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Program Director. Program Director, I think I would want to welcome the initiative by Chiefs and the Labour to open the Just Transition Center. I would actually say it is long overdue given the level of developments. But I would also want to raise a couple of concerns. I fully concur with Comrade Vavi when he mentions that we need to ensure social ownership. But currently we know funders want to fund profits. And we have people like Rudy here talking about finances. So how are we going to ensure that we get enough funding such that we are in a position to promote social ownership? Because for me, I think we're not just looking at profits, we're looking into the welfare of workers, we're looking into the welfare of communities. So is Chiefs going to look into what kind of model we can promote and advance so that those models advance social ownership and we ensure that the welfare of our society is prioritized over the privatization, especially of the energy sector? Then I think for me, some of the issues we fail to respond to is, as we currently speak, there are mine closures, but with the mine closures, we also experience the displacement of people, especially former mine workers. And to me, that trend speaks to the fact that even though we are saying we need the justice element in the transition, we don't seem to be responding to such issues of displacement of people by the mine workers, especially within the coal region. And are we going to look into that? Because it seems currently, in terms of our transition, we're focusing solely at the energy sector, and especially at the combustion level. We are not looking into what kind of impact does that have in terms of the entire value chain. And lastly, I think the speaker from FEDUSA mentioned the welfare of workers. Currently, South Africa is still importing pesticides, which have been banned in Europe. I haven't heard most of the federations speak against that. And here we see it saying we're launching a JT Center, which will look into the welfare of the workers. But at the same time, we're not even dismissing the fact that we still have harmful chemicals that impact negatively on workers' health. What is it that we're doing? And are we going to look into that? Because if we want to achieve justice, we need to create an environment that is good for workers to thrive and develop. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to take the last hand from Hans. Hans, you can go ahead and speak.
Thank you very much. Good day to all the participants. I'm Hans Awudi from Ghana. I've been in South Africa from 2019 to 2024, doing my PhD at the Center of Research in Education and Labor. But I'm a unionist, at the same time a researcher now. I want to find out how seriously the center is going to deal with very practical environmental issues that affects livelihoods and jobs. Informal mining that has devastated our water bodies, the forest, even our cocoa is under threat. Now, how seriously is the center going to deal with such issues? Very practical. I know climate change and all that matters, but these are very practical issues that arise that affect livelihood, jobs, and so forth. So I want to find out how the center is going to deal with. Currently, I've also formed a center here, a Center for Research in Economic, Labor Policy and Skills. Just last year, we deal with things like that. I don't know how the center is going to deal with certain, whether there are some collaborations that we can forge ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. I'll now hand over to Matthew to address the comments and questions and also do the closing remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, this is looking fine, Rudy.
I'm
That's right.
giving you all my thousands of pounds that I have at home that I don't need a bodyguard.
Been recorded, ne? Ties are coming my way. Comrades, I feel like I've been, comrades and colleagues, I think I'm appropriately dressed for revolutionary in 1917 also, but sure. Cheers. Thank you for everyone again for coming to attend our launch. We've tried to make this something that's establishing ourselves to our steering committee members, to other institutions that are supporting us, and also to the funders and to TIPS as well. So thank you for coming through, those who did in person, and for all of those online, gratitude for attending our launch. We will you'll be hearing from us as we go, of course. We also, I do want to say, some of the questions we will be dealing with will be coming from our steering committee, which exists of the trade union federations. And a lot of the questions that we've been asked now through our question and answer, really, comrades, a lot of those questions are coming directly to us through the center, through our steering committee. We're mandated to research, support, help keep the tools of the Trade Union Federation sharp by the research work that we do. We're trying to make that research work be evidence-based, scientific, but also something that workers themselves on the ground can actually utilize and move forward with. So we're not by any means trying to come out with research that is highfalutin and something that makes sense to academics and a few trade unionists. The design of our work is to try and make that make sense to those who are affected by it. It also includes government policy, policies coming from NED, like policies coming from business, and to see how that might impact workers on the ground, including employed, unemployed, community-based members as well. Excuse me. We also would like to be collaborating with institutes like Labour Research Services here. IEJ is present, Centre for Inequality Studies is here. We're trying to work with these labor support organizations, with academic institutes as well, to make these make sense to the workers' movement when it comes to just transition. Some of the questions we were answered as well relate to, I think, demands made that should be made through the trade unions and through the federations themselves. That will then, we'll try and help as the center. But I do want to say that the aim of the center is not to directly engage with any of these policy aspects. The center is here to support those who will be doing that. The center's design is to assist the unions community-based organizations, workers, so that they themselves can directly take what we say, take what the evidence is showing, and decide whether to use it or not. And we will be, as we run, designed, and Lebo, this goes to your point, the steering committee we have will be telling us how we'll be doing that. Yeah? Hopefully we'll be growing the steering committee, and when the center's more fully established, we'll have a board, we'll have a set, in my mind, a set of different committees that will be talking to us about aspects of the just transition and what the workers' movement in general is telling us that we need to be focusing on so that we can better support them. But again, we are not here to determine any policy or tell any workers' organization what to do with the information we provide. We are here to make sure that that information makes sense and is verifiable. It's something that workers themselves know this is an impact, this is what's going to be happening. It's something that we've got evidence to back it up. And it is vital because it is looking at a gap that exists. Corporations have their evidence. Flat earthers have theirs too, but we and government has their evidence. We're looking at what evidence workers are facing. What's their experience? What's their lived experience? It's a different kind of evidence, but it's evidence nonetheless. And some of it needs to be heard quite loudly, and we're hoping that the research we conduct and make available is something that workers can take and struggle with and go forward with it. So that's the design of the center itself. So with that, I'd like to say thank you again for attending. Some logistics. Thank you for everyone who made comments. Thank you for coming through. Those who've helped pave the road for us so that the center can run with it. And a special thanks to Saul and the TIPS team for housing us as we go forward. I would like to say some logistics. We've got some lunch that will be served in a few minutes, but we're going to show you, Sandra and I will take you down to our new offices and we'll show you where the center is set up and based. We've got some of the other TIPS units based there. We'll also show you, we've got a training room set up there for some of the engagements we're planning to have as the center and other engagements through TIPS. We're doing a little ribbon cutting ceremony, so please join for that. We're going to have some non-alcoholic champagne. It's just clear about, but it'll still be enjoyable. How responsible, yeah. So please join us for that, and then we'll be coming back to serve some lunch. So thank you very much for everyone who's helped us, and to the admin team at the back. Thank you so much for helping us make this possible. Thanks, everyone.